right, it is in the air today. Welcome in, everyone, to the 11th episode of the Blake and Jake Show on KCOU 88.1 FM. I am Blake Wallace, your host, joined by my co-host and great friend, Jake Aaron.
Hello, hello.
You can find the Blake and Jake Show on Spotify and YouTube at the Blake and Jake Show, or Instagram at the Blake and Jake Show, no spaces. It's been a busy few weeks in the sports world. March Madness has reached new levels of madness as NC State looks to be the first ever double-digit seed to win in the Final Four. Currently, the record of these occasions are 0-6. So NC State attempting to do the impossible this far. Regardless of who exits, the big man battle, whoever comes out victorious, they got to face the winner of Alabama and the belle of the ball, UConn. The action goes down Saturday night. I covered it a little bit earlier this morning. I was doing the Wake and Blake Show. We'll talk about that just a little bit more. So if you want to hear that, go ahead and check out the Blake and Jake Show. That'll be posted as a special. The NFL Pro Days are wrapping up, and mock drafts are never more fun than now. Check out our mock draft that Jake and I did 2 weeks ago. Jake and I will be talking more about that mock draft next week. I encourage listeners to check our YouTube and Spotify to hear that episode before next week. Jake and I enjoyed our work for that just hours ago. Reported by ESPN, the Buffalo Bills trade Stephon Diggs to the Texans for a second-round pick plus an assortment of later-round moves. Stephon Diggs pairs nicely with Nico Collins and Robert Woods at the wide receiver position. Couple that with tight end Dalton Schultz, and that Texans passing attack looks really scary for C.J. Stroud in his second NFL season. This makes Tank Dell especially scary, almost an X-factor player for that offense. Great year last year, was the second leading receiver, has some big playability there. I think this allows the Texans offense to focus just a little bit more on getting Tank Dell in the right positions to succeed. I think that works best for the offense and for Tank Dell. UFC 300 is right around the corner. Just one more fight night this week. Then next week is UFC's most stacked card yet. It kicks off on April 13th in Las Vegas. Lightweights and light heavyweights, names like Charles Oliveira, Justin Gaethje, and my favorite, Max Holloway, who will be fighting in lightweight for this event. They're going to be at the top of the rankings. They're all over this event, right? This is from top to bottom. These are ranked guys fighting premier competition. I believe Dana White himself said he made it his personal mission to make it the most stacked UFC card ever.
I mean, it has to be, right? It's UFC 300, you know?
That's definitely Dana White's mindset. Maybe I'm just not a big numbers guy. I don't see the importance, but Dana White definitely does. He has put it all out there. UFC 299 was spectacular. I love the showing. The main event was spectacular. I think 300 can quickly usurp that, though. It is going to be fun to watch. We would like to remind you that today is KCOU Sports Mania, which means we have 24 hours of all sports content. KCOU is a nonprofit, student-run station. As a part of this event, we are also raising money that goes towards traveling out of state and equipment, and have a donation link on our social media platforms. There is also a link on our website under the donations tab. You'll want to hit the gift fund. KCOU thanks everyone for tuning into Sports Mania. Jake, I got a chance this morning, 5 a.m., to host a special right here on KCOU as part of Sports Mania. It was the Wake and Blake. It was the Wake and Blake Show. Sadly, I cannot take credit for the name. That is the mindchild of our sports director, Mickey Doolittle. However, I got to talk about NCAA March Madness. I got to tell early morning listeners why this year's tournament is a good omen for the Mizzou Tigers basketball program's future. I gave listeners a sneak peek into what we would be talking about right now. There's just a week left in the NBA before the play-in tournament begins. And there's still some important positions to be won here. Last night, teams like the Lakers, Warriors, Timberwolves, Heat, Nuggets, Kings, and the 76ers gathered much-needed wins, while teams like the Mavericks, Thunders, and Rockets paid heavy prices for their losses. Tonight, the Lakers, Thunder, Suns, and Pelicans face similar perils with just 7 games left in the season to improve or maintain their standing. Today, Jake and I are going to explore some of these teams, what they have to gain or lose in this final week or so of the NBA regular season. We're going to start with the East Coast and the play-in spots. We're going to talk about the number 10 spot right now, currently. This switched just recently. Atlanta Hawks, number 9. Chicago Bulls, there is just a half game separating those two, Jake. The Hawks coming off a big win versus the Bulls in their last outing. The Bulls were actually 2-0 against the Hawks this season until that game. The Hawks played the Pistons tonight. Only one other non-playoff team is on their schedule, though. That's the Hornets. They have teams like Dallas Mavericks, who had a rough ending last night, but a decent showing last night on TV. Was that TNT last night?
I believe so, yeah.
I was preparing for these matches, but watching it when I could. Hornets right now are really their only easy matchup. And the Hawks are also missing some players, some key players, and some players that have, interestingly enough, unlocked a bit of this Hawks team and this run that they've had to make themselves competitive here late. They're missing Sadiq Bey. That's somebody I pointed out from the Detroit Pistons coming over that could be a real difference maker for this team. I still believe that, yet needs to get healthy before he can make an impact. Trae Young has been all the talk lately about, everybody's known it's one of the worst kept NBA secrets that Trae Young is not a great defender. In fact, probably one of the worst, if not the worst defender in the NBA. And then Okongwu did injury. So all of these injuries are accruing to something. Yet the Hawks are able to find something a little bit late versus the Chicago Bulls that aren't going to find any new fire. They're not playing poorly. Just there's not going to be any new transition like that. Is that an advantage for the Hawks? Or is Chicago right now with the advantage, a half-game advantage, and not getting these major roster constructors, even if the Hawks have found some momentarily success?
Yeah, I'm still going to give the advantage to the Hawks. Even though they've been without Trae Young for a while, I believe they have a winning record without him. I know it's close, but they still got that winning record. And just like you said, the Bulls, kind of having a steady roster. They have a steady roster, but that roster isn't full of any stars. So, guys that can really, really get them over the hump. So I think the Hawks are in a better position.
Looking at these two teams, where they are in the standings, I look at the Chicago Bulls schedule. It looks much easier, but it has 3 crucial matchups against the Knicks. I feel like the Bulls have to at least win 2 out of 3 of those against the Knicks, and then pretty much just lose 1 more against the Field to have a chance here to maybe extend themselves further. There's not really a chance that the Bulls are going to move forward, but at the same time, the Bulls can't be caught by the Atlanta Hawks. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I one of the reasons why I think the Hawks are in a better position to finish out the season is because with these 3 games against the Knicks, Jalen Brunson is on a tear right now. If I believe he was the Eastern Conference Player of the Month. So if he's able to get the Knicks these wins, which I think he is more than capable of doing that, then I think the Hawks are going to be in better position than the Bulls.
Yeah, it is going to come down to a situation. I want to ask you next. We're looking at what this could do. Winner of this game gets to play the loser of the 7th, 8th, whether that's the Heat or the 76ers. This is really just about home field advantage. So which team does it matter more that they get the 9th seed? Does it matter to one team more than the other?
I think I don't know if it matters to fans, obviously, but I don't know if that'll make a huge difference. Yeah, I really for the players. Obviously there's something to be said about home field advantage, but I don't think it'll be the difference maker in who moves on. Yeah,
and of course it's important to note out what the Bulls are missing. They're just likely not going to get a whole lot back, but of course Lonzo Ball looking to play next season, but not this season. Zach LaVine out. Patrick Williams, a great defender for them at that forward spot, out. Javonte Green is day-to-day. It's a tough ride out there. I do agree. When I look at these teams and I try to break it down, though, there's just one thing I want to look at, and neither team really excelled at home, but the Hawks were the better team. And I think the Hawks, with their tear right now, would benefit the most from getting that home field advantage in that play-in game. Moving into the rest of the field, though, I mean, next is really Miami Heat and the Indiana Pacers. And this is where this conversation starts to really heat up, because the Heat, right on the edge, they have to play a play-in game to get in unless they can usurp the number 6 Indiana Pacers just a half game ahead. So far this year, they're 1-1. Both games have been super high scoring. We're talking 140s, 130s, 120s. That feels kind of every day right now. But what we know about the Pacers is they're number 1 in points per game, and they're number 1 in assists per game. They've held that pretty much throughout this year. Spectacular offenses. And each game, it feels like, even though they're 1-1, the Pacers have gotten what they want by making these such high scoring games. Yet they're gonna have to play this out till the end, right? And their big head-to-head is in April 7th in Indiana. So Indiana's going to have home court for one of the biggest games of the year, because if they lose that game, Miami might just overtake them. We'll have the advantages. They'll have all the tiebreakers. If it comes down to any part of that, Miami will likely then stay out of the play-in, get into that 6th seed. That is a prime spot for Jimmy Butler right there, trying to get into that 6th slot. And we're going to talk about why, because if you're looking at this schedule, you get into the 7th seed, you're playing the Bucks. That's a tough. It's doable. They've done it. In fact, this Heat team has, with some of the main parts still here, has went into Bucks territory and won. You could also ask them to do the same thing if they're going to the Celtics. That's an even tougher ask.
Yep.
But if they get that 6th seed, right now, that's a limbo between the Cavaliers, the Knicks, and the Magic. All much better matchups. All much better first-round matchups for the Heat or the Pacers, whichever one is able to secure that 6th seed. So when you're thinking that just because the Heat are the 7th seed, that it's not important, just remember what they did a few years ago, not just in the pandemic, but also later. They were able to make 2 finals runs as more afterthoughts of the Eastern Conference. And this year, kind of priming up to do a little bit of the same. I want to go ahead and ask you about that matchup. What's the biggest thing to you between the Miami Heat, Indiana Pacers, able to play it out in a head-to-head matchup at home? Really, I mean, of course, one team could go lose 5 of 6 of the other games, and it doesn't matter. But likely this will be of utmost importance.
It will be so important. Probably one of the most important games of the regular season, because when looking at both teams, their upcoming schedule, both teams have winning head-to-head records against 4 of the 6 teams they're playing, and both teams have a better overall record than 4 of the 6 teams that they're playing. Both teams very even with their upcoming schedule, so this game is going to be huge.
The pressure is on the Indiana Pacers, and here's why. Of course, I've already talked about it. They got the head-to-head matchup at home. Think about if they lose this game. Well, the Heat's last 2 games of the season are both against the Raptors, which right now have a 1-in-3 chance of being the NBA's worst team at this current moment.
I believe they're on a 14-game losing streak, if that's correct.
14-game losing streak. Think about the Pacers from the Pacers side of things. You can pretty much mark those as wins for the Heat because they're so important for them. Well, that just it shortens the rope for the Pacers. The Pacers have no room for error because they could really be finding out that they're a 7 seed with 4 games remaining. That's how much the Heat could really usurp them in the next week. This is a little bit of now just a strange conversation because we're getting into that 3 to 5 seed. We highlighted a little bit. Right now, the Knicks are at 5, Orlando Magic are at 4, and the Cleveland Cavaliers were at 3. Last night, that was not the same. When I had started my research for today's show, this was not the same, obviously. Just one night upsets all. That shows you how close this is. There's just one game separating the 3rd seed from the 5 seed. And there's not really a lot we can break down from any of these squads, right? I'm going to ask you, out of those 3, Knicks right now are in 5th. I have a feeling, I'm going on a gut feeling right now, Jake. You like the Knicks of the 3 teams here, but go ahead and tell me, why does one team deserve to be the 3 seed over the other team? Which one would be the 3 seed in your mind?
You are spot on. I am going with the Knicks. Going off of what I said earlier, Jalen Brunson. I mean, look, I'm high on Brunson not just because of his time with the Mavs, but what he's doing right now for this New York Knicks teams is phenomenal. So very, very high on the Knicks. And I think they're going to be able to pull it out, especially since there's only 1.5 games back separating these 3 teams.
Yes, and the surprise is obviously the Orlando Magic.
Right.
The Cleveland Cavaliers, though, to me, could be extremely dangerous. And if you're asking me to pick the dark horse of the East, who shocks us? If anybody shocks us, I don't think it is the Knicks. I think the Knicks have gotten more eyes on them this season, more credit for themselves this season. It would be, to me, I'm looking up and down the East right now. I've got to say, to me, it's the Cavaliers. I know Cavaliers are right now in 3rd, but they are considered just one of those young squads, and they're not really considered the young squad that could possibly still be a finals contender or even of real contention in the East, which is interesting. I don't know if that is oversight because what Cleveland was able to do in their first year in the playoffs was pretty spectacular. I have to imagine their sophomore attempt is going to look pretty good as well. Are there any of your thoughts now that we've kind of wrapped up? Obviously, there's one more team to talk about, but before we get to the belle of the ball of the Eastern Conference, go ahead and tell me what you think about the rest of the East 2 through 10.
Well, first, I just want to talk about the Orlando Magic just for like a second because I think we kind of just brushed over them. What they're doing compared to where they were last season and a lot of other seasons prior is pretty great. It's pretty amazing. At the beginning of the season, I kind of counted the Magic out. Before the season started, but this season what they're doing is just great. Even being in this conversation right now. This time last year, I don't think we would have think that we'd be having this conversation about the Magic in the playoffs.
Yeah, I would have already handed out the losing record banner at the beginning of the year to the Magic if you would have asked me. Even though, the Magic should have all the talent, all the first round picks, all the top level draft guys, those lottery picks. How have they not turned that into something at this point? Are they been getting like 1 through 5 picks since Shaq left? What is going on here? Yet I agree with you. Finally turning in a little bit, making, the payoff. We like to see payoff here, and it's good to see, and they haven't even hit the main stage yet, but it's good that we're going to get to see the Magic on the main stage in the Eastern Conference. Now, it's time to talk about Boston. They're the boogeyman. They're the belle of the ball, whatever. We're using all kinds of terms today. Can any of the teams in the East beat the Celtics? Who gives the Celtics the most trouble in round 1?
So I don't know if any other team can beat the Celtics, but I have 2 teams that could potentially give them trouble in round 1. The first one is we talked about them before, the Heat. Just because you can never count playoff Jimmy Butler and Eric Spoelstra out in the playoffs. Even though you want to, you're thinking he can't do it again, can he? He surely can't do it again. But he could probably do it again, The other team that might give him some trouble in round 1 is the 76ers. Joel Embiid came back last night, scored, I believe he had 20 points and I think 7 assists against the Oklahoma City Thunder, a very, very good team. So I think they could definitely give the Celtics some trouble, but I don't know if the trouble that they give them will be able to knock them out, but we'll see.
Fantastic answer, Jake. I'm actually going to hold out on the audience a little bit here. I have an answer for this question, but I'm going to hold it to the very end. And really, listeners have a lot to look forward to because the East is just the beginning. The West gets crazy.
Yep.
And we're all going to break it down in just a few minutes here. Going to take a quick break. Please stay with us. You're listening to the Blake and Jake Show on KCOU 88.1 FM. All right, welcome into your one and only break from the wow, that is a lot of B's. Your one and only break from the Blake and Jake Show.
There we go.
Not doing that again. That is a lot of B's. Thank you so much for listening. We're about to get into the Western Conference in the NBA. Just 1 week left in the season. It's close. It's personal. And it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Today is KCOU Sports Mania, which means the station is raising money to go towards providing more educational opportunities to students, such as travel to cover Mizzou sporting events and upgraded equipment. There is a donation link on our website, kcou.fm, under donations and the gift fund and our social media pages. Check it out. Thank you so much. Let's go ahead and get into the Western Conference, and we've got to start out real quick with Golden State Warriors. I know that you're not going to be super happy to talk about it because they're victorious off the backs of your Mavericks.
Yep.
Yet they're able to now set themselves apart for that 10th seed, ensuring really pretty much that they're going to get into the play-in. It is a long road for the Rockets to challenge the Warriors in any sort of way in this final week, likely meaning that Houston Rockets comeback in late season just won't ring out. Jake?
Yeah, you said they're 3 games away. The Rockets were very hot. They put up a really good fight for the seeding last month. They went 13-2, but now they're on a two-game losing streak. The Warriors are on a 5-game winning streak. So I think last night kind of closed the Rockets' chances of going getting a higher seed.
It's a case of too little, too late, and it's just the Rockets' bad luck that at that 10th seed, there is a team that has had some struggles, yes. They're a strange team. They're old, but they're young. But it works, right?
Yeah.
It works, at least to the tune of the 10th seed. They're starting to get hot themselves and start to make a push going into this plan that really makes them a scary matchup. However, they really don't have a chance to compete, move to the 9th seed, or really move up too much. The Lakers are a little bit too far at the moment. The Lakers right now are the 9th seed. The 8th seed is the Phoenix Suns, and the 7th seed is the Sacramento Kings. The Lakers are just 1.5 games back. The Suns and the Kings are both tied for 8th and 9th place, respectively. This is big for each one of these 3 teams. The importance of getting that 7th seed versus the 8th seed, as we're about to talk about, especially in the case of the Lakers, is absolutely paramount. How does it get done? How do the Lakers get ahead? That's something that's going to have to be figured out. But what if the Lakers get it done? We're going to talk about that right now. Let's look at the Lakers and where they currently are. Right now, they're going to be hosting the Warriors. The Warriors don't have to take a far trip for that. That is nerve-wracking in itself.
Yep.
And right now, put yourself in the Lakers' shoes. Rob Pelinka, bust, not happy because you don't want to play Golden State in a 1-game roulette and then possibly have to play for the 8th seed. Why? Because the Nuggets are currently sitting at that number one spot. I get it. I don't think the Lakers have any ability to pick their matchups here. They obviously just need to keep winning. And honestly, we're going to talk about this too, but the top of that rankings, number 1, Denver, number 2, Oklahoma City Thunder, number 3, Minnesota Timberwolves. They're so close to each other. I believe just a game separates the 3 teams there for 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. So really a fight for any of these positions, it might be fruitless. However,
Real quick.
go ahead.
it's not a game. It's actually a half game that separates these three teams, makes it even crazier.
Not even a full game separates
Not even a full game.
three teams. Think about those three teams in itself. I want to take you there. Right. You get your number one team. Right now, it makes sense. It's the Denver Nuggets. Last night, the Denver Nuggets were to the Oklahoma City Thunder, who were really spoiled by Embiid, and there's going to actually be investigations. I don't know if you heard into that, Jake. Might be dropping this on you a little bit, but the way that Embiid went from out to in so quickly is catching the ire.
Interesting.
And that's something that's going to change this year for sure. It's been a topic of the NBA. It was through the first half of the season. A little bit died down. I think this Embiid stuff's going to pick it up, carry it into the offseason, where there is going to be stricter rules set for how these teams report their players in at timely intervals. It's been ridiculous this year in the way that these coaches have manipulated the injury report, which is not what that was intended to do. Obviously, there are other importance outside of just for these teams and for their own benefit. I mean, now you can also play the game. The Thunder should have prepared for Embiid then, but like how? Like
yeah, especially a guy that's been out for so long. You don't expect that.
Yeah, I agree, and I don't think any. There was some rumors, but I think it was very plausible at that moment that he wouldn't play. It might not even play for a week. I think that he might not have even played for the rest of the regular season if you're in the Oklahoma City Thunder front office, game planning for this. That's just my thoughts on it. All the switches, though, it means the most for each one of these teams. It means the ton for the Lakers, the Kings right now. Let's talk about the Kings by themselves, because if I look into the plan and I say which one is the wounded fish, the wounded fish is the Sacramento Kings right now, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
The injuries to Malik Monk, to Kevin Huerter, these are guards that were playing significant offensive possessions. These were big guys. Malik Monk was like sixth man of the year in waiting. Absolutely a fire plug too. Like really, Malik Monk playing a backup role gave some effect to the starters that can't be explained. The way he plays with such aggressive, and when they're out, they're watching that. Mm-hmm. His effect cannot be understated. It stinks for him too, because this was supposed to be a big year for him, a contract year. So, is the team able to look past it? It's tough to say that, but I hope so for Malik Monk's sake. However, I think those losses at guard just make it tough for Sacramento to compete with the likes of the Suns. And then again, with the likes of the Lakers or the Warriors, if they even continue to hold on to that 7th or 8th seed, because it is really so close. The Lakers are just 1.5 games back. Their schedule is not super hard to look at. In fact, I can start to see an avenue or two for the Lakers to get in that 7th or 8th slot, play possibly the Suns, and whether they win or lose, go in, and you got to really hope you're not playing the Warriors once again, because like I said, you don't want to play the Warriors in a one-game stand. It sounds terrifying. It sounds terrifying to me. It terrifies the Lakers right now. It's likely terrifying the Kings if they're trying not to think about it and they're failing. And the Suns I think are the ones that aren't going to fall too far in this final game stretch. But it makes out for interesting first round, doesn't it?
It does, but just looking real quick, there's a website I like to go to, and they rank they use all this math to rank like remaining schedules, like the strength of them.
Yeah.
Phoenix apparently has the hardest schedule out of any team in the league remaining, but just behind them, in 4th place is Sacramento. So that things could really change in the next few days. Yeah,
the Suns are just so good, though. I mean, they have such deep talent. They have talent that these other teams aren't playing with. It makes me think that they can get through that schedule. Now, the Kings, I do see them getting hit. They are the wounded fish of the group. I don't think there's a doubt of that.
Yeah, it's going to be hard for the Kings when they play the Celtics, they play the Thunder. They got the Suns, which that's going to be an interesting matchup. But yeah.
Yeah, the Kings can absolutely not lose that game. That is just like we were talking about earlier with the Heat and the Pacers. This is the game of the Western Conference that the Kings just neither team can afford to lose. But the Kings especially, I just think that they have added pressure to win this game. I don't think the Suns are in any of that pressure. What are your thoughts on that? Because I think you can go both ways on that. What do you feel about the Suns and the pressure they're feeling?
I mean, they obviously have to feel some pressure, but it's hard to. They feel some pressure, but it's hard to feel a lot of pressure when you have Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker. Even though they haven't played a whole lot of games together, you got to feel some confidence.
And with that answer, you get the random cowbell because I just saw that it was sitting here.
Woo! Wow, thank you. I'm
That didn't
honored.
sound as cool as I thought it would. I've honestly never rang a cowbell, and when I heard it was in here, I said, no way. And then I forgot about it. But here it is. That was an experience. It wasn't what I was expecting, but that's what life is. All right. We're going to talk about some of the young and spectacular teams here in the NBA. Stop smiling. Can the Timberwolves or Thunders, these young teams, these dynamic teams, these teams that have blown people away and exceeded expectations, can they make a deep run in the West?
I think they both can. They both are two dominant teams. I don't know how well they would match up against Jokic and the Nuggets, but they still both have a chance to make a very deep playoff run. I could see a situation where one of these teams ends up playing the Nuggets in the Western Conference Finals. And we were talking about Embiid just coming back. Shams reported, one of the top NBA reporters, that Karl-Anthony Towns could return from his torn meniscus just before the end of the regular season. So I think that that could help or definitely will help the Timberwolves. He'll have a couple of games before he gets in the playoffs. But I do think both of these teams could make a deep run in the West.
I am going to talk for a minute, but before I do, can you go ahead and look up the Timberwolves record without Anthony Towns this weekend? Or not Anthony Towns, Karl Anthony Towns.
Yes.
This year. Thank you so much. I mean, when we're looking at it, I think one of the two teams that I picked, the Timberwolves or the Thunder, will succeed, have moderate success. I don't know if I can see either of these two making a deep run. I think the one that goes deepest likely has either the 2 or 3 seed. I think that there's could be only one if Denver is the 2nd or 3rd seed. I'm going to let you give that to me yourself. Do you feel comfortable with that? Go ahead, hit me with it.
Yeah, so the Timberwolves have an 11-4 record without Karl-Anthony Towns this season, which is a lot better than I thought it would be, honestly.
I had not heard the numbers on it, but that math checks out with what I've been following. And I want to say, I think that Karl-Anthony Towns gives off sort of the same effect as we were talking about with the Hawks, with Trae Young. I don't know if Cat is the best thing for that Timberwolves team. I like the identity of the Wolves with Anthony Edwards at the helm. Now, the question is, how are they when it comes to postseason? Because we know that Rudy Gobert can be exposed. To me, what I never understood about the Rudy Gobert thing is this is, to me, when you put Cat at the 5. But Cat, it hasn't been talked about as much as AD. But Cat does not want to play the 5, does not have that 5 mentality. Would love to shoot that outside ball. Definitely one of the better shooters out of big men. But you look at that, I don't know if that's a recipe for success. I would like Karl-Anthony Towns to get healthy for a little longer and see how this Timberwolves team looks in the playoffs. It does come down to, can either Timberwolves or the Thunder avoid first the Nuggets or the Nuggets side of the bracket, because you really want to play them last in the conference final if you're any of these young teams. And you really want to be 2 or 3 is really where you want to be. Right now, that's how it would shake out, and I think that's the best case for one of them to have good run, because there's a chance where the Timberwolves and the Thunder as the 2 and 3 seed could be playing themselves in the next round. So it's just something to look into. Extremely interesting. The West looks wild in the first round. What are some first round matchups that you are interested in?
I have a couple. The very first one, I'm excited for Mavs Clippers. You got Luka versus Kawhi, Kyrie versus Harden. It's going to be a very exciting series. I don't know if you remember this, but the last time they played a series against each other was 2020 in the bubble. Even though the Clippers won that series, Mavs fans will always remember Luka hitting a 3-point shot in overtime to win Game 4. Really, just thinking about that just makes me so happy. And it gets me really excited for a potential Mavs Clippers matchup.
For those who haven't gotten to an experience a Luka playoff game, it's spectacular. I don't want this to come out in a terrible fashion, but I just think he's got an attitude that these other players just don't have. It's almost like a sassy attitude towards these other players on the court. And people know that about him and the ref. It's been a long-standing conversation. There's been dialogue there. But just the way he picks these fights with these players at high-pressure moments, it makes me think he's got a little sass to him. But, I'm looking at it, and I think we could get that. In fact, I'll take Mavericks versus Clippers round 1 all day. Did you know that Luka has 5 40-plus point games in the playoffs, including a playoff best performance against the Clippers in a Game 7 where he put up 46, 14, and 7. Now, he does have that 5-8 playoff record against the Clippers, but this is like the common theme as well for the Mavericks. Guess what? This year, Luka's not alone. Yep. He's got a star that is going to be as close to a quasi-equal as you're going to get right now. And so no longer is he going into these matchups versus 2 or 3 stars like the Clippers or the Suns and being by himself. Now he has a guy. So I'm wondering, does that change the way that Luka plays in these series?
I don't think it changes the way he plays at all. But even going past Kyrie Irving, this is the first time in Luka's career that I feel like he also has pretty good big men surrounding him. Luka's one of the best passers in the game, and when you have a big man that's better than Dwight Powell, he could really do some damage to this Clippers team.
Yeah, the forward position had long been kind of the criticism of the Mavericks. There's been some outside shooting criticism as well. I feel like those were more unfounded, maybe caught on just a bad night and overexposed. But yes, the Mavericks are finally now they have the parts of a real team. They've got great forwards that are fantastic with lobs. I even like Derek Lively, who's getting less minutes, but is a young rookie who came in and contributed right away. You have to have that at least off the bench, especially in the playoffs. Could provide some valuable minutes if anybody gets in foul trouble. And then you're talking about now you've got to guard Luka, you got to guard Kyrie. These games are going to come down to 1 and 2 possessions. I mean, tell me the most fantastic late in the season finishes that there are. I think of Luka finger roll from 3-point land, and I think of Kyrie doing pretty much a hook shot from the free throw line, the elbow really. And these are 2 of the best shot makers really the NBA has on one team. And what's fantastic is Luka and the Mavericks have a chance to do something awesome. Yep. They get to go and play the Clippers in the first round. Regardless of whose house it's in, they get to play the Clippers in the first round. Next, they get to go and get another revenge game, another revenge cycle. They get to play the Suns possibly. Wow. Could you imagine first round Clippers, second round Suns? At that point, I think Luka steals the NBA playoffs.
That would be a dream, honestly. That would be so much fun. Luka would go on another level for both those series. That's awesome.
Yeah, and if we're just going to go right past and predict who will win the other side of that bracket, that puts them up against the Nuggets right there at the end. Now, where else would you want to be against the Nuggets? 2 of the best guys that are just not in America going up against it. That's what it should be this year in the Western Conference. That's what it could be this year in the Western Conference.
That's great. Luka going up against a team he destroys, a team he doesn't really like with a player, Devin Booker, and then they play the Nuggets and he goes up against probably one of his best friends in the NBA. That's awesome.
And it would be, like I said, it would be really the Luka Doncic just party. It would be the postseason party.
Yeah.
And that would be the best thing really for the NBA because they need a new face of the league. He's right there. Just gotta win. Just gotta win, baby. And and then Luka Doncic could really be the next face of the NBA. Just a little bit more time here. We're about to round this out, and I thank you so much for listening to the Blake and Jake Show on KCOU 88.1 FM. Other than Denver, who are the strong favorites to win the West? Which teams are capable of winning the Western Conference?
So this is going to be a boring answer because we kind of just talked about these teams, but the teams I feel like other than Denver are the Timberwolves and the Thunder. And the third team I have in there are maybe the Mavs in the right situation. They got to play how they've been playing this last month, but as much as I would want to say it, I don't know how realistic that is. As much as I can dream in this last 20 minutes. But no, I feel like the Timberwolves and the Thunder are both pretty capable of taking down the Nuggets based off of just their record, how they've been playing this whole season.
Certainly. Okay, and I am going to ask you the question, then I'm going to answer with my answer. It's going to give you some time to think, okay?
Okay.
And maybe a rebuttal. Maybe if you don't feel comfortable giving me your own answer, challenge some of mine. How about that? And that's how we'll end this. East and West. How many teams are capable of winning the NBA title this season? I went ahead and put up my list. I have 3 in the West. That's the Nuggets, the winner of the Clippers and Mavericks, and the Lakers. I have 4 in the East. The Celtics, the Bucks, the Knicks, and the Heat. Now, I put 3 that I wavered on. They didn't make the cut, and that was the Warriors, the Timberwolves, and, of course, the Thunder. I just think they're too young. One more year.
I don't know about the Thunder and the Timberwolves being too young. I don't know. I get why people say that, but they've gone this far. They've been this successful, so I think they have a chance. What I want to talk about, we said before. I said before you can't count Jimmy Butler out, so that's fine with the Heat. I want to talk about the Knicks and the Lakers. Can you give me just real quick a little more why you think that?
I'm going to defend Knicks, Lakers, and then maybe give you some leeway on your criticism of the Timberwolves there.
Okay.
Now, I feel this way about the Thunder. Thunder have not gone on a deep playoff run yet. I think you need to have one where you're in at least the second round, embattled, and then you get kicked out. Next year, you come back with a vengeance. I think that's on the path of Oklahoma City currently. Mm-hmm. I think that's what we see this year. Now, Minnesota, I'm going to relinquish a little bit because we've already seen that, but I wasn't super impressed with what I saw last year, so I'm not exactly expecting a lot either this year. I'm expecting more, but I'm not expecting a lot. Now to defend my picks for who is capable of winning the NBA title, I'm going to start with the Lakers. The Lakers are in one of those interesting spots where they have 2 stars. If LeBron James is able to stay hot from three-point land and Anthony Davis keeps being that defensive stalwart that I don't think there really is anything replicable to what Anthony Davis does. Right now, it's probably Victor Wembanyama or nothing. And when you take that with a collection of shooters, I'm high on their guard positions. I know that people have been beaten up on certain players. I think that guard roster is fantastic. I think it works around LeBron. I just understand that it's all about hitting shots when you're playing these auxiliary roles to LeBron James and Anthony Davis. But when you have LeBron James and Anthony Davis, you're absolutely in the right spot, right? As long as you have a chance, you're in the right spot. You have the 2 best players really still. I think Anthony Davis is fantastic, still top 10. I think the same about LeBron. Now, I'll say that one thing they need to do is avoid Nuggets round 1. If they can do that, if they can find themselves in the 7th seed playing anybody other than the Nuggets, that means Nuggets have to get 1st seed so that the Timberwolves and Thunder slot in the 2nd and 3rd seed. I think that they could hold off playing the Nuggets until the conference final. And by then, I think it could be an even game. It could also not be. Like, the thing is that Denver struggles a little bit more with health. I think that the Lakers do too, but they're going to struggle with gas and wearing down as well. So I do think it's better the Lakers play them late than early. What are your thoughts on that?
So two things, two rebuttals to that. I know it's the playoffs, so it's going to be different. The Lakers have an 0-3 record against the Nuggets this season. And in terms of, you mentioned the Thunder being too young and not having playoff experience. I get that, and I know it's just one guy, but their oldest player right now is Gordon Hayward, and I believe he has some playoff experience. So I'd like to think that veteran presence. I know he's not playing on the court a whole lot, but I'd like to think that some veteran presence could help.
I'm not convinced. I'm not. Looking at the Lakers, though, I thought it was good what you brought up. Head-to-head against the Nuggets this year, 0-3. 1-2 against the Timberwolves, but I think that in the playoffs, it's a level playing field. And 3-1 against the Thunder. So think about it. Lakers get Thunder. Next round, they have to play the Pelicans or the Timberwolves. I think that's a pretty good route for the Lakers. I don't know if I convinced you on that one. I'll hold you off because we are about to run out of time here. I'm going to cleaver this last one. You asked me to defend the Knicks. The Knicks have Brunson. Right now, one of the best point guards in the NBA, just everything that he's able to do. And then you have the forwards positions. They have a lot of skill. They have some wing skill as well. I think they're a rough and gritty team that plays great defense. I wouldn't be shocked if the Knicks were just a tough team for anybody to play, won a series 4-3, won another series 4-3, and suddenly they're in the Eastern Conference, and it's 2-2, and it's that big of a deal. That's why I have the Knicks. And I do think both of those teams really do have a shot to make it all the way. That does it for the 11th episode of the Blake and Jake Show on KCOU 88.1 FM. I invite listeners to be our very first followers on our newly created Instagram, the Blake and Jake Show, no spaces. If you caught part of the show, but not the whole show, or maybe you want to hear the whole show over again, check us out on Spotify and YouTube at The Blake and Jake Show. It has been an absolute pleasure. We hope to see you next week for another episode of The Blake and Jake Show, Wednesdays at 2 p.m. on KCOU 88.1 FM. Thank you so much for listening.